Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
So I don't know how many of you watch the daily press conferences that are streamed live on azcardinals.com or via the Cardinals Twitter accounts at azcardinals. And if you don't, that's fine. It's certainly difficult to kind of interrupt your day at a 1 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon to hear what head coach Steve Wilks or quarterback Josh Rosen have to say. But if you do, sometimes you do kind of get those raw moments, if you will, that aren't going to maybe be posted or sit later on in the week that you'll hear. But there was one earlier today, and I don't know if you noticed it, MJ, but kind of taking you behind the scenes. Josh Rosen speaks to the media first. He always does so in his socks. Takes his cleats off. Hey, you want to be comfortable, right? I mean, you don't want to be you've been practicing for 2 hours, so you take your shoes off. That's no problem.
Probably sweaty.
So he talks, and then head coach Steve Wilks comes over. Well,
now Wilks
is wearing shoes, yes.
Correct.
So Wilks comes over and notices that Rosen has left his footprint. So you get
sweaty footprint.
So you get non-coach speak here. You get a little personality from Coach Wilks that, not the rigid, tunnel vision as far as game day and all this. So he looks down and says, "See these footprints? I'm sitting here standing in the presence of greatness right there."
He did say that.
He got a smile, and everyone laughed, and it's still up there on azcardinals.com and, of course, the Cardinals Twitter account at azcardinals. So, it was sometimes you get those moments, some levity in the midst of a difficult season.
Yeah, and Josh obviously is affected by what's happening with the fires in California, and he on his Instagram account, he showed you some pictures or a video, and he's asking for people. He said the prayers are one thing, but we need people to come out here and support what's going on. And if you could just make a $10 donation. So, you can go to his Instagram account. You can go to the Cardinals, just in general, because he wanted to talk about that today. And then we got into football questions.
Yeah, it certainly meant something to him, especially being a California kid and having gone to UCLA. As we come to you from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, let's take off on this Wednesday and let you know what's ahead on the show. Well, new week, new starting offensive line combination. We play the numbers game, and you'll hear from the director, a.k.a. Kyle Odegard, as he takes us inside the Arizona Cardinals Film Room. It's your exclusive access on a most talked about play from Sunday that actually did not work.
No, and it's fascinating that we're going to talk about the onside kick, and, just as the game was unflowing, and you're thinking, why are they trying this right now? Because we've talked about it. Anytime you play a team that's going to score points at will, and Cardinals were able to hold them to 26 points, which is encouraging, you got to flip field position. You got to get a special teams touchdown. You got to get a defensive touchdown. And the beauty of that was they only gave up 3 points. But we've talked about it in the past. I mean, obviously, you start looking at some of those plays that people will discuss. I was surprised we didn't get a lot more feedback about, why are they doing that? Why would you want to spot Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs another 7 points? Well, Steve Wilks was thinking about going into that week, and they worked on that. Now, we don't get a chance to see that, but according to Kyle Odegard, who spoke to Phil Dawson, and obviously everyone involved in there, it was set up. That play could have worked. Unfortunately, it didn't.
Yeah.
But it only gave up 3 points on the other end. But that's what you have to do sometimes when you go into a game knowing we have to score X amount of points and we can't give up X amount of points. And I think that Steve Wilks figured that out during the week, spoke to the staff, spoke to the players, and it could have been executed a little bit better, but I had zero issue with the call.
We'll discuss that. Of course, your questions via social media as well, using the hashtag CardsCover2, using the number 2 to get involved in the show, and we'll do that a little bit later on. But first, the news of the day, and let's start with the injury report. 9 players, that's right, 9 players, according to Coach Wilks, did not practice on Wednesday. They are, in alphabetical order, Budda Baker, Phil Dawson, Larry Fitzgerald, Rudy Ford, Rodney Gunter, DJ Humphries, Mike Iupati, Robert Kimdichie, and Chad Williams. Now, Fitz had a vet day off. I think this is the second straight week that he has not practiced on a Wednesday, but it's not injury related. He has typically been given Wednesdays off, though, for much of the season. And Gunter had a personal day, according to Coach. Everyone else dealing with the injury or two or whatever. And the injury, though, to Baker, it sounds like is a little bit more serious and significant than perhaps the Cardinals would hope at this point, because I just got the sense, listening from Coach Wilkes, that he's going to miss some time, and maybe even this week as well. Now, nothing's been announced, but just kind of reading between the lines and what word choice was used when Coach Wilkes is talking about Baker. And it's kind of interesting because, one, we were told Monday that he underwent an MRI, and Sunday he exited the ball game but came back and was on the field for almost every single snap in the ball game except for a handful. So whatever is ailing him, Baker, it's got to be something significant to keep him not only off the field on Sunday but off the field of practice.
Yeah, I want to say it's a heel injury, and that can linger. You just never know it. Now, he was not in a walking boot in the locker room. He was walking fine. I mean, that you didn't notice it, but it could be one of those scenarios where you got to hold him out a week, and how they definitely need him out there, and that's why the Cardinals have made some roster moves. Bringing in a couple corners. I mean, right now you say Ben Wickery and Patrick Peterson are 1 and 2, and then you throw Brandon Williams in there, and then Jamar Taylor looks like his snaps have been limited. So you got to kind of flood the position, and we'll see what happens. Now, a couple of these guys obviously have ties to the head coach and the defense in Carolina, so we'll see what they can do. But again, this is where you are at this point in the year, and you just hope you can stay healthy, because I always think the teams that we're talking about in January and maybe in the first weekend in February, you got to get a little lucky, and that means you got to stay healthy, and it just happens. I mean, last year we talked about the Redskins, 23 players on IR, and I know towards the end of the season you start stashing players on there, so you want to see some practice squad guys. But in this league, it's about nutrition and durability and staying healthy, and sometimes you got to be lucky in that area.
The two cornerbacks the Cardinals added on Wednesday, David Emerson and Leonard Johnson. Emerson is a 5-year veteran with 8 career interceptions and played with the Raiders last season. Johnson, a 6-year vet, has spent time with 4 different teams, most recently the Bills in 2017. Coach Wilkes on the 2 newest Cardinals to the 53-man roster.
A veteran guy with Emerson. I went and worked him out coming out of NC State. I thought he was a good football player then. He's bounced around a little bit. Leonard I had in Carolina, so he's, been a part of the system. He played in the system in Buffalo, so hopefully he's a guy that we can just bring in and plug in and see what we can get out of him.
Now, with the Baker injury, as far as next man up, you could, and it's good that Trey Boston is back in the fold, but Coach also brought up the fact that Ben Wickery's versatility would allow him to play some safety, and then, of course, the moving parts, and depending on how much Emerson and Johnson are able to pick up the defense in a short amount of time, potentially could be up and active on Sunday.
Yeah, just like we talk about underrated signings, maybe they didn't, steal the headlines in the offseason, but Ben Wickery's been a pleasant surprise, and, he's playing a ton of snaps. He played 100% of defensive snaps. He's also playing on teams, and the beauty about him, he's played for Wilkes and Holcomb in the past. He could play inside corner, outside corner, and you could slide him to safety. So that's a great Swiss Army knife you can have, because you're going to have to, obviously, his versatility and his durability is really going to help him get more playing time. But he's one of the fixtures on defense now.
Yeah, and of course that knowledge of this defense certainly helps, and allowed him to go from kind of that number 3 corner to jump up and move ahead of Taylor to become that number 2 corner opposite Patrick Peterson. And of course he's having a good season as well, as one of those offseason additions that new head coaches like to bring in, because they're familiar with what I like to do as a defense, and of course that connection back to Carolina certainly helps.
Yeah, and it's really simple from a standpoint of he's familiar with the defense, so he can spend more time looking at the opposing team and the wide receivers or tight ends he's going to have to cover, because he played in Carolina. So this is nothing new to him, where guys are still kind of learning what they're trying to do. Hopefully they have it figured out by now, because if you have many more mental errors, you're probably not going to be on the field. So he brings in a spark from a standpoint of the familiarity with the defense in Carolina. Now you can kind of be a lot of knowledge and spread some of that information to other players on the team.
The additions of Emerson and Johnson, those two roster spots filled because, in case you missed it on Tuesday, the Cardinals put right guard Justin Pugh on injured reserve and also released safety Eddie Pleasant, who was kind of added for depth when Boston was on the shelf. But the Pugh injury, according to Coach Wilkes, a knee issue, an MCL, but did not sound like it was going to be something that carried over into 2019. Now, how it affects maybe the offseason, but at least the rest of this season, but nothing to carry over to where he wouldn't be available training camp in week 1.
Yeah, it's a big loss. Now, again, they all need to play better up front, including both tackles, guard, and centers, or 2 guards. But, yeah, you're talking about an ACL at this time of the year. I mean, now you're looking at, is he going to be ready for training camp? Is he going to start the season on PUP? It's never good to have any kind of injury. We always downplay it when it's somebody else, and it's just an MCL tear. Well, he's tore a ligament in his knee. Basically, it wasn't the ACL though, which is big. So we get to off-season workouts. I mean, I'm sure he's going to have to rehab here, like every player does, whether you're on IR or you're obviously getting ready for the next game. But the main thing is get ready for the next offseason, and we may not see him in the first strength and conditioning phase 1 or phase 2. But when we get to OTAs and training camp, that's when you want to make sure he's 100%.
Pugh becomes the 3rd offensive lineman now on injured reserve, joining center A.Q. Shipley and versatile lineman John Wetzel, all on IR, which is not good because it leads into the discussion as far as protecting Josh Rosen. We saw on Sunday, got sacked 5 times, hit 13 other times, but important to note because we've seen this before that most of those sacks, 3 of them in fact, came in the 4th quarter with 6 minutes to go with the Cardinals down 2 scores. And you know what that means because the defense knows what it means. You're going to throw the ball and puts the quarterback in a not a great position because the defense, as they say, pins their ears back and rushes the quarterback. And that's when Rosen got knocked around the most, is when the defense knew, the Chiefs knew that the Cardinals were going to pass.
Yeah, he's been sacked 18 times in the last 4 games. And you got 1-5 in there, you got 1-6, then a 4 and a 3. So that's got to get better. And they've really have focused in point of emphasis, at least the last couple of days, is they want to protect the edges. They want to go with mass protection. That doesn't mean you can bring in another lineman. Now, that would be Corey Cunningham if I had to guess. I don't know if that's for sure, but he has the ability to play the swing tackle. You have a couple tight ends on the roster that they are more blockers than they are pass-catching tight ends, and John Phillips and Jermaine Gresham. You got the fullback there. So, and I think a lot of people are wondering, when you do that, it may sound good in theory, but that means you're taking a wide receiver or 2 out of coverage and route running, and that means – but I think Rosen hit on it today, and I never really thought about these. He said, when you do that, though, you got to be able to run the football. Because now all of a sudden they can't stack the line. Now they got to go one-on-one on the outside. So that's important that they can win the one-on-one matchups up front. But I think that's something they should have done last game. The way Andre Smith was getting abused by D. Ford, and D. Ford's a really good player. I mean, he's really come on the last couple of years. I want to say he has 9 sacks right now. And then Justin Houston just made a really savvy veteran play. He kind of baited him a little bit on that screen pass that they got for the interception. So, yeah, I mean, you like to go 3 wide, 1 back, and 1 tight end. That's the ideal thing, so you can spread people out. But they're going to have to compensate by trying to protect the edges when it comes to Rosen and him being able to the ability to throw the football.
Rosen immediately after the ball game said physically he was fine despite all the hits. The question to him, though, on Wednesday was the mental aspect. How does getting hit in the pocket so many times affect him mentally?
I think the big key is consistency. I mean, regardless of what happens, you have to approach every situation in life, every snap, every day at the facility, not like as if it's your last, but approach it as if everything's going great. Approach it the same as if everything's going poorly. If everything's whatever, it's about consistency, and you kind of want to be a rock for a lot of other guys who may be looking for something, some sort of steadying force, I guess you could say. So every time I come into the facility, I just want to be someone that guys can look to and know exactly what they're getting.
You can't show that it bothers you. And it plays into that, whether you can read body language or whatever, but the point is that no matter what is happening, you need to have your leaders in that locker room, and the quarterback in particular, to kind of stand above all of that. Nothing can get to you now in your own private moments, perhaps, but at least when you're out in public or amongst your teammates, you have to be that guy that says, I'm okay, I'm all right, let's go, jump on my back, I'll carry you.
Yeah, and I think this probably started in college for him. You know, maybe a guy, maybe they didn't have the starting offensive line out there, or a guy dropped the ball in maybe in a fourth quarter. Listen, it starts at a young age where you learn that you take responsibility regardless if you're at fault, and that will go a long way in the locker room. Now, if you start connecting dots over the last couple of weeks, it seems like Rosen has been more vocal, good, bad, or indifferent. So it's not like only when you do something bad, but he's encouraging when you do something good. And Wilkes said he likes that because now you got another extension from the coaching staff to the quarterback, who really a lot of guys look up to in the locker, regardless of the age, regardless of his win-loss record, touchdowns, interceptions. So him being more vocal, there's really an accountability board with him now, meaning this is your assignment, and we expect you to do it. Now I got to make sure I make the right throw and don't put you in a situation where you get hurt. So that's encouraging at a young age, only 21 years old, commanding the huddle, and then all of a sudden maybe getting on a teammate, not personally, just trying to get better to where the same mistake doesn't happen twice.
And the other thing he's good at is, even in the face of defensive linemen coming after him or that pocket collapsing, is he's always maintaining his vision downfield, which is a quarterback you need to have, and that is something that he touched on earlier on Wednesday.
It's kind of a point of pride for me. Two plays, the one I kind of chucked up to JJ a little bit, kind of got flustered when I didn't really need to. And then there's another one I forget at some point in the game, but it's definitely a point of pride to me to stand in the pocket and not get flustered. And whenever I start to see ghosts, I kind of get mad at myself. But I think that's what quarterback's all about. Is if you can keep your eyes for that much longer, you give your receiver that much more time on his route, and hopefully that's the difference.
And it's certainly not easy to do because, as he called it, seeing ghosts and things flying in your peripheral vision, and all of a sudden you start thinking, and now that's when you panic a little bit and you're not getting the ball out, or you're taking a sack, or you're throwing a ball that gets intercepted. That's what you don't want to have happen, and Rosen certainly, even at a young age, recognizes what he needs to do, and so far has shown a good pocket presence.
Yeah, the saying is you don't feel the rush, okay? You don't look at the rush, you feel the rush. You can feel when guys are around you tangling at your feet or your legs, okay? You could see out of the corner of your eye if a guy's beating the tackles off the line of scrimmage and he's coming after you. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to step in the pocket. And I do think there's times when he's looking at Larry, and maybe Larry's getting ready to make his cut and he's making the throw. I don't want to say he's staring down receivers, but you get a tendency, I'm going to go to the guys I know are going to catch it. David Johnson, Fitz, Christian Kirk. I think Ricky Seals-Jones has done a better job as of late. Looks like his hands have gotten stronger. He's not dropping the ball as much. So all those things are part of it. I remember I covered Dave Brown, and he was a backup quarterback for the Cardinals, and we were in Flagstaff, and they had drafted a quarterback from William and Mary. And I ran into those guys. I was out picking up food one night, and we were just talking. He goes, tomorrow I'm going to show you how to throw a football. And I'm like, that's great. I'm not going to play. But he told me, he was telling him at this conversation, he goes, the first guy you see open, throw it to him. Because you're going to start confusing yourself by going through your progressions on the left side. Then you look to the middle of the field. Then you look to the right, and then there's nobody open. You usually have a guy you can throw it to in the screen game or in the slant, or like a screen pass. And I watched him in the preseason, and he never looked off the first guy he looked at, and he completed the pass. And Dave Brown was like, yeah, you're probably not going to make it, but at least you could say I completed passes in the preseason. But the point is, it happens because you're relying on a guy to make a play that you're confident is going to make the catch.
Now, of course, all of this, in order to read and look at second looks and third reads, is you need to have time.
Yes.
And the offensive line did not give Rosen the time needed in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter when they were trying to come back. But now you look at what's happening with the offensive line, and no more Justin Pugh, Mike Upati, who knows if he's going to be available on Sunday. So now you're looking at Jeremy Vunovich and Ode Abushi as your guards flanking your rookie center. And I went through and looked. If this is the case, and it's going to be the case, that Sunday will mark the 6th different starting offensive line combination and the 4th in as many weeks for the Cardinals this season, you want to know why, or one of the main factors why this team is struggling offensively, look no further than the guys up front as far as being able to stay healthy. 2017, last year, 7 different starting offensive line combinations. 2016, there were 10. 2015, Cardinals went 13-3. There were 4. You have to maintain a level of health amongst those 5 offensive linemen. Cardinals, including this year, that's 3 straight seasons in which they have not been able to maintain healthy. And what's the result? Well, your record's not that great.
Well, I mean, they played 4 left tackles last year. Prior to that, year before, they went through 5 guards when Mathis went down. I mean, that's one unit. You see defensive players rotating, defensive linemen. You see them bringing in nickel and dime guys. You see them rotating wide receivers, running backs. The 2 positions you don't see them rotating is quarterback and offensive line. That's where the continuity and chemistry has to be. Now, it's a physical sport, so you're going to have injuries. Now it's a matter of what are your backups going to do. And, you got to give these guys credit. They're up to speed on the playbook, and I thought they ran the ball a lot better last game than they have in previous games with David Johnson. I thought Edmonds had a little bit of a role. So it's not the ideal situation, but you got to deal with it. And fortunately, it's just part of the game.
And for head coach Steve Wilkes, it's his number 1 priority going into every week.
I think a lot of it is the personality of the quarterback, but I also think as a coach you have to be smart. And I think where being smart is really trying to create ways of how you protect them. I think these are quality reps for Josh, being in these certain situations, whether it's, last week, going back to Minnesota, going back to the 2-minute drive against the 49ers. All these are things that he's going to learn and grow from and be even better next year.
And, of course, his next opportunity to get some valuable reps comes up on Sunday when the Cardinals host the Raiders at State Farm Stadium. 2:05 is the kickoff, 9:30 a.m. The pregame coverage begins. If you want to know where to watch, listen, and follow the game, just go to azcardinals.com/Game Central. One more note here on Wednesday. It was announced earlier. Congratulations, by the way, to Corey Peters, the Cardinals nominee for the 5th Annual Art Rooney Sportsmanship Award. It's an award presented to an NFL player who best demonstrates the qualities of on-field sportsmanship, including fair play, respect for the game and opponents, and integrity of competition. The winner, by the way, will be announced the night before the Super Bowl, and it's certainly a deserved honor because we've talked a lot about Peters here on Cards Cover 2, and not only his work on the field but off the field as well. And it's not always easy to do that, to have the respect for the opponent, especially in the trenches.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more unappreciated. I mean, I don't want to say he's underrated because he goes out there and makes plays. Just watch him when he's in the game. You don't see the running back getting 10 and 12-yard rushes. So well-respected in the locker room. Cardinals gave him an extension. They definitely need him. And, he's a guy that's willing to do community stuff and go talk to people. I mean, he was sitting down with the governor and along with some other players just about social justice. So really good guy in the locker room and a great leader, and there's a reason why he's a captain. By
the way, Larry Fitzgerald was the award's first recipient back in 2014. Speaking of Fitz, again, he's now number 2 all-time in receiving yards in NFL history with 15,952, and this Sunday will mark his 100th career regular season game at State Farm Stadium. For more numbers, we go inside the numbers.
Save for the first series, in which Kansas City scored in only 3 plays, the defense made strides against the high-octane Chiefs' attack. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes was held to his lowest passing total of the season so far and was sacked 5 times, twice by Chandler Jones. The Chiefs were only 4 of 11 on 3rd down, and their 26 points, a season low. Offensively, Arizona improved on 3rd down, converting 50% of their chances, and had 21 first downs to Kansas City's 20. David Johnson had his best performance of the season, averaging 4.7 yards per rush, gaining 183 all-purpose yards, and scoring 2 touchdowns, 1 receiving and 1 rushing. Josh Rosen was under duress all afternoon, throwing for 208 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, while being sacked 5 times and hit another 8. The Cardinals' offense was at their best on the first drive of the game. and the first drive of the second half, each totaling 12 plays and more than 6 minutes of possession time, both resulting in touchdowns.
He is an easily touchdown Cardinals.
In 2004, Larry Fitzgerald recorded his first 37 yards receiving on his first catch in his first NFL game. 14 years later, in the fourth quarter Sunday in Kansas City, Fitzgerald passed Terrell Owens to move into number 2 on the NFL's all-time receiving yardage list. With just 8 more receptions, Fitzgerald will pass Jerry Rice for the most receptions with a single team in NFL history.
Yeah, he won't catch Jerry Rice as far as receiving yards, but certainly with one team he can catch the greatest of all time, if you will, as far as numbers are concerned, Jerry Rice. So Larry Fitzgerald certainly putting himself with some elite company, although he was already amongst elite company even before this season or before the last couple of seasons.
And he's put a lot of pride in just wearing one uniform. I mean, obviously Denny Green felt he was worthy of drafting, even though they probably needed a quarterback, but the rest is history. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's raising his family in the Valley. He's had plenty of chances. I know other teams, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Patriots have called in previous years about, hey, we'll pick up his existing contract. And he's never, I'm sure it was, hey, I'll think about it. But at the same time, he takes pride in wearing one uniform, and I think it's great for the organization.
David Johnson's numbers on Sunday also impressive, 183 total yards, the touchdown catch, the touchdown run, and he certainly looks, and when he spoke with the media earlier on Wednesday, sounds like he is all the way back, or at least feeling much better where this offense is going. And that's key, because if you're able to have a running game, as you alluded to earlier, MJ, as far as what Josh Rosen was talking about Mac protecting, you can do that if you have a running game. And, you know, even with the banged-up offensive line, David Johnson was able to run the football for much of that ball game.
Yeah, it came off career highs in yardage rushing and then receiving, and 183, and he had a couple of touchdowns, one rushing, one receiving. Yeah, and we got a chance to talk to him today, and, you know, Wilkes has kind of told us the last couple of weeks, and maybe it's more from Kirby Wilson, they want him to be more vocal. Just like Rosen, they want him to be more vocal. And those are, to me, 2 leaders on offense that are your production guys, and I'll throw Fitz in there, and maybe Christian Kirk and Ricky Seals-Jones. So here's, you know, again, he goes back to Leftwich. They're using a version of the 2016 offense, and nobody's offended by it because it was productive. And I don't know how many yards he's going to get the rest of the season, but clearly he's going to get between 25, 28 touches per game, and that means the Cardinals are able to control the line of scrimmage to an extent and not falling behind, and that's where you want to see him in the fourth quarter where they're gaining yards on the ground, and then at that point you're playing against the clock.
He's also running more physically.
Yes.
He's running downhill, as he mentioned earlier today, as far as running over that defender as opposed to bouncing it or doing the jump cut. And he likes all of that, but in talking with the coaches and Kirby Wilson, they want him to be a little bit more physical, because that means instead of maybe a 1-yard game where you address the contact, if you meet it head on, instead of 1 yard, maybe that's 3-4 yards, or maybe that's even breaking a tackle, because the way he's built and as sturdy as he is, he's not one of those small running backs. And a lot of those defenders, especially in the secondary, they don't want to tackle David Johnson.
No, he's built like a brick. I mean, from head to toe, calves, thighs, back. He got the stiff arm. Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see him put his head down a little bit, not against the rules, and lay the shoulder. And I'm telling you, those DBs, you get to that third and fourth quarter, Craig, they rather play matador defense. They just want to, you know, kind of get in his way and let somebody else come in and clean him up. But no, I mean, we know how important he is as this offense. We've witnessed it in 2016, and there's no reason that he can't come close to that. Now, I know he obviously is behind the 8 ball just based on 2,000 yards, 100 or 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving. But anytime you get in the red zone, goal line, give the ball to David Johnson, good things are going to happen.
His receiving touchdown, this week's call of the game, as heard on the Arizona Cardinals Spanish radio broadcast.
Posición escopeta para Rosen, saca el balón a lanzar, sector de la derecha, conexión a las manos de David Johnson. Touchdown, Arizona, preciosa jugada, totalmente solo. David Johnson recibe el pase de Josh Rosen y entra caminando en la zona prometida.
Gabriel Trio on the call there, and of course that touchdown tied the game at 7 with 8:03 left to go in the first quarter. And well, the very next play of the ball game, Coach Wilkes decided to roll the dice, and he attempted an onside kick.
The Cardinals with an onside kick, and the ball is loose on the far side and knocked out of bounds. So it'll be Kansas City ball at the 39-yard line.
Well, first of all, let me just say I absolutely love it. I love what is happening here because, once again, listen, coming into Kansas City, coming into Arrowhead, trying to beat this 8-1 team right now, you need the extraordinary to do it, David. You need the cheat, as Sun Tzu would say, right? You need the extraordinary to actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's what they did right there. They took a chance, they did something risky, and I'm all for it.
To quote Coach Wilkes, we're going to be aggressive. We were not going to put our hands in our pockets. And those words delivered to Kyle Odegard, who joins us right now here on Cards Cover 2. It's time for the always entertaining and soon-to-be award-winning Arizona Cardinals Film Room. The director, Kyle Odegard, joining us here from azcardinals.com. And this is the first time this season, and I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head if you've done it in the past, but so far this season, this is the first time we're dissecting a play here on a Wednesday that did not work. It was executed properly, but the Chiefs did as well. But the bottom line is the Cardinals attempted something and they were unsuccessful.
And that's a big thing to me, is looking at the process in addition to the results. I think everybody is very interested in if a play works or not. But I think it's important as a coaching staff and as a team to have a direction you want to go in mind, and whether it ultimately works out or not, I think it's about the process and did you make a sound decision? And I agree with Wolf and I guess Sun Tzu, where this was a good choice to try an onside because you're on the road against a team that's going to be competing for the Super Bowl. You had to try to steal some possessions, steal some points.
Yep.
Overall, I like the choice of them trying it.
And go over what Dawson was explaining to you, because they were much like a quarterback. You're looking and you have to make this split decision, and I'm just kind of inferring that this was Dawson's decision to actually go ahead because he needed to see certain things that the Chiefs were or were not showing.
Yeah, what they said was the call was an onside from the coaching staff to Phil Dawson, and then he looked at the alignment and tried to figure out, are they lined up the way we want them to be in order to do it? So Phil Dawson had the power to call it off and say, we're just going to kick the ball deep. Instead, what he saw was Ben Neiman is a Chiefs linebacker who is at the 50-yard line, and Spencer Ware was the other guy on the 50-yard line toward the side of the onside. And they liked the alignment because Neiman was a little bit more near the middle of the field and Ware was close enough to the sideline where they thought they could fit the ball in between them right after the 10-yard mark to try to make it work. And it was a very good kick. I think it got there pretty much perfectly. Budda Baker did a really nice job of get over there. And with the rule changes on kickoffs, you can no longer run from 10 yards. So he didn't have the same momentum, but Budda did a really nice job of getting there. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, Ben Neiman also did a good job of recognizing that the onside was coming, because if he took a step or two back to think a regular kickoff was coming, I think it definitely would have worked. Because you notice some of the other Chiefs aren't quite there. They went back a little bit, but the one guy that you were hoping to fool, he noticed it quickly and got there, and that's what caused the collision and let that ball pop out. That being said, I mean, having the ball pop out is good as the kickoff team, because then it's squirting around and it's basically 50-50, and you're just hoping that the ball stays in bounds and your team grabs it. Zeke Turner, very close. His job on the play was to kind of hang back and let Budda and Rudy Ford and Derek Coleman go for the ball. And then Zeke and Dennis Gardeck, the linebacker, were kind of on ricochet duty where they see where the ball was going to go. And that's why Zeke got there quickly, because he was watching the play from behind, saw where the ball went. He dove for it, couldn't quite come up with it. But again, the fact that they had this 50-50 shot at it, I think, reinforces the notion of why you try a surprise onside early, because the other team isn't ready for it.
A game of inches is what Turner told you for azcardinals.com.
Yeah, he was feeling like if that ball bounced a little bit closer to him or straight back, he would have gotten it because he had a good eye on it, but it just so happened that the ball bounced completely away from him. He was still basically the first one there, along with Damian Williams for the Chiefs. So it's at that point, there's a collision. It's an oblong ball bouncing around. You never quite know where it's going to go. And also Buddha did a nice job of letting that ball go 10 yards. I asked him, is it tough to wait? Because he's sitting there.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, but, if you touch it, the play's dead. So smart play by Buddha to wait. And unfortunately for him, he did get hurt on that play, and they're hoping that he can come back soon. But it kind of collateral damage from the try is he collided pretty hard with Neiman and Spencer Ware.
Now, we've seen a lot of kickers try for an onside kick. Sometimes they whiff. And, I think Catman, maybe Rackers was pretty good at it, but Dawson was, the way he's able to push this ball and get a bounce right there.
Right.
To me, that and it's something that Wilkes said they discussed all week.
Yeah, they were definitely talking about that, going back to, like we said, knowing that they were underdogs and we're going to try to do some things to limit Kansas City's possessions. I was impressed by the fact that he ran up to the ball and was able to slow down, keep his body control, and give it a nice kick. Obviously, on the other onsides, when everybody knows it's coming, you're next to it, and it's a little bit easier of just a couple steps. He kind of downplayed it. He said, it's always been in my arsenal. I'm sure as a kicker, you love doing some out-of-the-box things and showing off your toolbox a little bit, but perfect kick, and I think good execution by the Cardinals and a great job by the linebacker Ben Neiman to recognize it.
Yeah, not a surprise that Buddha Baker was involved in a play, Dennis Gardak, and then Zeke Turner. Those have been the names we've talked about so much on special team. It's just normally when you see a kicker kick it off the ground, usually it will go maybe 10 to 12 yards, and then you really don't have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, something that else could work down the road, the mortar kick. They got the speed on the outside. He kicks it somewhere between the 20 and 25. At this day and age, you can go down there and try to get that ball, but it's nice to show it on film. Now teams are going to have to be aware of it.
Yeah, I think, if any little bit helps where a team is waiting for that and then they don't quite get back into what they want to do blocking-wise and you get an extra 5 yards, it's always a game of cat and mouse between, I think, especially special teams coordinators that really love all the fake kicks and the things they can do. We'll see how it plays out the rest of the season, and from the naked eye, maybe we don't even notice things, but it's possible to help them. And just knowing that how close that came, I think it reinforces the decision and gives the players a lot of confidence in what Jeff Rodgers is doing, the special teams coach, and the philosophy behind being aggressive.
How refreshing. We're not talking about the long snapper and the holder.
Right.
These guys are all on the same page. And, since we're focusing on special teams here, TJ Logan's given his team a little bit of lift on kickoff return. Now, curious to see if teams are going to try to kick it short, and at that point, you're just trying to possess the ball. Sometimes they're going to kick it out of the end zone, but you could see the upside in the speed when he gets to the outside. Yeah,
and I think when the offense is struggling, like it has been this season, if you can get an extra 10 or 15 yards or
it's huge.
Even get one into their territory, it's a big deal. TJ Logan has been tough to get active because he hasn't done a lot besides the kickoff return, but when you don't have the dynamic players everywhere, I think anytime you can get one of them active and give them a shot, even if it's only 2 to 3 touches a game, you never know when they're going to be able to find a crease and really make it a big gain.
For those listening to the podcast, I invite you to go to azcardinals.com/film room for Kyle's work on the onside kick and throughout the season, minus last week. We really missed you on Wednesday. Didn't know what to do without the director here on Cards Covered 2.
I'll be back the rest of the games.
The timing of this play, typically onside kicks, especially in the NFL, it's late. You're trailing, fourth quarter. We need this extra possession. And MJ was right. Even on the post-game show, there wasn't a lot of discussion. It might be because of how the game ended, down 2 scores and the number of times Rosen got hit. But I'm in agreement with what Wolf said, and I understand what Wilkes was trying to do. You're trying to steal a possession, and you weren't expected to even be in this ball game. Now all of a sudden it's tied early in the game. You get that ball, who knows what happens, and I just wonder, because of what the position the Cardinals are in with their record, and maybe we see some of this a little bit more, maybe not an onside kick, but maybe a little bit more gambling from the coaches as far as, and that puts some confidence on the players as well. Like, we've worked on this, let's try it, as opposed to we're working on it. Yeah, we're never going to use it.
Yeah, and I think the key is to have that aggressive mentality and also understand, like we were talking about, does this make sense? You don't want to be aggressive for aggressiveness sake. So I think once they realized the alignment that Kansas City was in, that made them think about, let's try this. So I definitely agree. When the situation is there for you, and if you're down or you're playing a team that's expected to beat you by 10, 15 points, why not try it? Give your own team a lift, and sometimes if you can just stay close, then that gives you the ability to win the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you don't want to be reckless. Now,
Right.
when they face some forced downs and they're over the 50-yard line, my thought is go for it. What do you have to lose?
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, if you think you're going to have a hard time scoring points, then you let Dawson line up and kick a field goal there. Not reckless, but again, they studied this in practice. They figured this was the best time to do it. And like I said on the postgame show, I thought we were going to get a lot of feedback and just, why would they do that after they just scored? And, I'm like, that was the golden opportunity. We were able to see stuff. Dawson's been kicking forever, so I have no issues, especially going forward on fourth down, because to me, that's how you build confidence, knowing we can line up and get this first down versus trying to punt it and put our defense on the field.
And I was trying to research the onside kick percentages,
Yeah.
and from what I gathered, onside kick, when teams know it's coming, is about a 20% conversion rate, but a surprise onside kick, this data was 2001 to 2010, it was a 60% conversion rate.
Wow.
So if you feel like you're getting that ball around 60%, I think it's clear that that's the right decision. And the way we saw it, I mean, that was basically a 50-50 play that didn't go their way. But the fact that you're going to get it 60% of the time in that situation, I think it made all the sense in the world to give it a try.
Well, how about the Saints? Biggest game of the year.
That's
Right.
what I immediately thought of.
Come out at halftime, and they go with the onside kick, and Sean Payton had to notify the officials that, I guess he told them before the game, but he wanted to make sure nobody was offsides, and that propelled them to get Drew Brees and a championship for the city of Louisiana and New Orleans. So, yeah, I mean, you got to pick the time to do it, but the fact that he tipped the officials off before the game and he reminded them as they were coming out, because you don't want an offside penalty. You cannot do that all over again.
Well, the Saints were trailing at halftime.
Yep.
They come out of the locker room, a long halftime with the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden that's the perfect opportunity. And it's the first time, because I went back and was looking, first time ever an onside kick in the Super Bowl at that time. That did not happen in the fourth quarter. And, just wonder because, and it might be more difficult now. Back then, they didn't have these new kickoff, rules as far as where you can line up and being able to run and load one side. But,
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more coaches gamble, go for two, go for it on fourth down because, this is your department, Kyle. It's the analytics. This is the numbers. The numbers are out there that are telling these coaches that even on 4th and 2 from your own 42, the odds say you're going to get it. And even if you don't, well, if you have trust in your defense, you should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, teams for so long were so conservative, and you're right. You look at the numbers, especially when it's like on the other teams, 37, 4th and 2, when you're outside of field goal range. Nothing makes me madder is when you punt right there and it's a touchback and you get 17 yards. Like, if you go for it, you're more than likely than not to convert. So I think the aggressiveness has been shown that it works mathematically, and coaches are certainly taking heed to that.
Well, and normally when we see onside kicks, it's because you're trailing in the fourth quarter. There's only a couple minutes on the clock. You hope the 2-minute warning is going to save you some time. So from that point, usually I'd be wondering how many do an onside kick in the first 10 minutes of the game. Usually it's either third quarter or at the end of the game because you're trying to retain the ball back so you can get a win somehow, some way.
azcardinals.com/film room for all of Kyle's great work. You interested in sticking around a little bit? Time for the Bird Gang to sound off here on Cards Cover 2. Hear what the Bird Gang has to say using the hashtag CardsCover2, using the number 2 to get involved in the show. We'll start with Instagram, and user wants to know, do you feel like Rosen is building a solid rapport with Ricky Seals-Jones and Christian Kirk as weapons, maybe not for the rest of this season, but building towards the future?
Oh, I think absolutely. The wide receiver core as a whole, I think there's been issues trying to get separation and some inconsistency, but what we've seen from Christian Kirk early on has certainly been encouraging, and Ricky Seals-Jones is a guy who went undrafted, and there were questions about him, but I think he keeps on taking strides, and he's definitely a matchup problem for defenses. So I think you have nice 2 building blocks there, and Josh Rosen definitely seems to be getting more comfortable with them each week.
I think he's gotten stronger with his hands, because there were times this year the ball would be there, and he doesn't body catch it. He catches with his hands and brings it in. There were times defensive backs would just try to knock it out. I'm sure he's spending time in the weight room, but you could see his hands are getting stronger, and that's going to help him in the blocking game where he can shut a block and then release and go out for a pass.
Yeah.
Looking at the Cardinals again on offense, Instagram user wants to know now that Justin Pugh is on IR, who fills that spot along the offensive line?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, it's going to be the 2 guys that probably finish the game. I don't know. Wetzel's on the shelf. I think Corey Cunningham could be an option as a swing tackle, but I don't. He's too big to play inside.
I just didn't want to say Vunovich. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Jeremy Vunovich.
Vunovich.
It just rolls off the tongue now. He's been here for a while now. It's just easy
He's like
to say.
a regular now.
Yeah, him and Ibushi are played at the end of the game, so you'd have to assume those are your guys if Upati's still down.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that offensive line just cannot stay healthy. Moving to Twitter, user wants to know your Pro Bowl Cardinal players for 2018. And by the way, while you two think about that, Pro Bowl voting is underway right now through December 13th. Just go to NFL.com/Pro Bowl vote.
It's tough because when you have a losing team, it's hard to get guys into the Pro Bowl, but I think a guy like Chandler Jones is a clear Pro Bowler. Andy Lee has had a Pro Bowl season, and then Patrick Peterson, to me, is continuing to play at a very high level. So those would be my top 3 at this point.
Zeke Turner as a sleeper. I mean, he's got the tackles on special teams. How did Budda Baker make the Pro Bowl last year? Playing on special teams. I want to see more on defense. Yeah, Fitz not putting up numbers. Christian Kirk, I think we're going to see him on some of the rookie offensive teams at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't see him winning Rookie of the Year just because, the record, and then you got guys that are more productive there. The only wild card, Andy Lee's a really good call by Kyle. But I think if Zeke Turner can get in, that'd be Josh Bynes has kind of been one of the most consistent.
Antoine Bethea as well.
Antoine Bethea, unfortunately, it's a numbers game, and usually it's a popularity contest. Yeah. So Larry may be grandfathered in. He's made 10 now in his career. It'd be nice to see him, but he doesn't play in the game, so why vote?
Hasn't stopped people yet.
No, go vote, because you never know at the end. Guys tap out for injury. They hit a bonus in their contract, and then you get the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. So there's other ways.
Don't doom Fitz yet. Maybe he'll go this year.
Only if he takes us with him.
Orlando,
how about that?
Yes.
We'll drag him there if he takes us with him.
Exactly. And it's a great place to bring the family for the whole week in Orlando because of the amusement parks.
NFL.com/Pro Bowl vote. Easy for me to say. Now through December 13th. Appreciate the Bird Gang signing off here on this Wednesday using the hashtag CardsCover2. We'll do it again on Wednesday. Of course, if we did not get to your question here this afternoon, always hit us up on Twitter or Instagram. We'll always try to get to those as well after the show. Kyle, appreciate you once again, and we'll do it again next Wednesday.
No more bye weeks.
No more bye weeks.
No.
We just need to find something for you to dissect in the offseason as well.
No.
We certainly enjoy Film Room here on Cards Cover 2. Special thanks to those behind the scenes: Tim Delaney, Jim Omohundro, Devin Henry, Jeremy Schnell, plus Grant Grialou, Jonathan Hayward, Brandon Natus, Jesse Aranda, and Jackson Sipes. For Kyle Odegard, Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. Have yourselves a wonderful Wednesday. We'll talk to you on Friday here on Cards Cover 2.